In his 1796 farewell address, George Washington explicitly warned the young nation about the dangers of political factions. The United States Constitution never actually mentions political parties, yet today, trying to run the American government without being a Democrat or a Republican is virtually impossible. That early absence created a massive power vacuum. Organizing, mobilizing, and governing hundreds of millions of people requires a level of national infrastructure that the founding documents simply didn't provide. Political parties evolved to fill that void. They do the invisible work of democracy, recruiting viable candidates, raising money, and simplifying incredibly complex national issues into digestible platforms for the public. Today, that education process is hyper-specific. Campaigns cross-reference your location data, search history, and social media habits to serve you targeted ads designed to get you to the polls. But there is a highly transactional side to this operation, known as patronage. Parties routinely reward loyal donors, corporate backers, and campaign workers with lucrative government contracts or appointed jobs once they take power. This combination of organizational power, professionalized data, and financial rewards has turned the two major parties into the dominant operating force of American life, effectively controlling every entrance to the halls of power. A rigid two-party system is an outlier globally. In countries like France and Italy, you will often find a dozen political parties represented in a single parliament. Many of these nations use proportional representation. If a minor party earns 10% of the national vote, they are guaranteed roughly 10% of the legislative seats. On the opposite end of the spectrum are one-party states. In places like China or Cuba, the party is the government. Any organized opposition is structurally impossible. Some nations maintain the illusion of choice. Russia experimented with democratic elections in the 1990s, but today, multiple parties exist on paper, while one regime wins every election by a massive margin. The United States sits entirely apart from these models due to a specific mathematical chokehold, the single-member district. In almost every local, state, and federal race, only one candidate can win a given area. Because of this winner-take-all math, coming in second or third place yields zero legislative power. The United States never formally outlawed third parties. It simply built an electoral math problem that ensures anyone outside the top two factions cannot survive. Because of this math, the history of American third parties is largely a graveyard. Minor parties usually fall into one of three doomed categories: single issue, ideological, or splinter parties. Single-issue groups like the Pirate Party focus narrowly on topics like copyright law, while ideological groups like the Libertarians push for broad reductions in government size. Without mass appeal, they quickly fade from the ballot. The most disruptive threats to the establishment are splinter parties. These form when a highly popular figure breaks away from a major party over a bitter internal disagreement. In 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt stormed out of the Republican Party to form his own progressive or Bull Moose Party. He successfully siphoned millions of votes away from his rival, but still failed to capture the presidency. Even candidates with immense popularity face brutal logistical hurdles. While Republicans and Democrats automatically appear on state ballots, outsiders must gather hundreds of thousands of signatures in a tiny window of time, and they are largely boxed out of federal campaign funding rules. Then comes the final psychological death blow. Citizens will often agree with a minor party's platform, but refuse to cast a ballot for them out of fear that their preferred candidate cannot statistically win, opting instead for the lesser of two evils. Third-party candidates must navigate a hostile structural gauntlet that is specifically designed to protect the major party's dominance. If third parties are mathematically doomed to lose elections, are they completely pointless to American democracy? Not entirely. Third party actually function as the essential research and development department of United States politics. They take the risk of beta testing radical policies that the major parties are too afraid to touch. In the late 1800s, minor factions like the Socialist and Populist parties were the first to popularize the fight for a woman's right to vote. Those exact same fringe parties proposed the 40-hour workweek and the abolition of child labor decades before the Democratic Party finally adopted the issues. In 1992, Reform Party candidate Ross Perot captured 19% of the popular vote by hammering the issue of the federal budget deficit. The winner of that election, Bill Clinton, was forced to address the deficit because Perot proved that millions of voters demanded it. The two-party system survives by absorbing the best, most popular ideas from the third parties it defeats. Minor parties might never rule Washington, but they serve as the invisible pressure valves forcing the nation to evolve.